Hello morning viewers, and welcome to the channel. We are at Melbourne Tram Museum this morning, and I plan to walk through this extraordinary tram museum in Melbourne. History of Melbourne trams goes back to over 100 years, and so this tram museum holds around 20 to 30 different tram wagons and coaches from historic era till modern time.
We've got different gauges on the railway lines.
Yeah.
In Australia is due to a dispute between an Englishman, an Irishman and a Scotsman.
Okay, so I'll be walking through this historic heritage site and I'll record whatever on display. There's all these tow trams and there is a narrow strip, and hopefully it will be a fantastic walking tour of Melbourne Tram Museum. I just came very early. It opens around 10 o'clock on Wednesday and it's a midweek, so I found about an hour to come and record this because they don't open until Saturday again, so it is very limited access. So hopefully it will be fun walking tour. It's called Hawthorn Tram Depot, and it's a very heritage location, and it's registered by the Heritage Council of Victoria. So we are inside the Melbourne Tram Museum, so let's walk on this extraordinary site. So this is the entrance, and look at the site. It's so extraordinary. It's already looking pretty spectacular. I'll just go around the whole museum first, and obviously you can see the contrast. The very old tram with completely open carriage, wooden chairs and everything made with wood, and then it has got no cover. Of course it has got cover on the top, but then all the sideways are open. We saw this type of tramways in San Francisco as well, and there is the control inside at the middle. We have seen this type of tram in San Francisco, and you can travel on it. It's pulley driven and cable tram, so basically it's pulled by a cable. And so I was told that I can sit on these chairs, so I'll just go on and sit in one of these chairs and look at this historic tram. It's a fantastic location here in Melbourne, and it's free. Obviously you need to give some donation to get a ticket, but it's your discretion, and all the tram carriages are preserved and maintained by volunteers, and this is a fantastic initiative. Look at this site. It's so interesting, so beautiful. I'll just walk through these sites and see what's on offer, and then we'll try to get in and find some interesting history. But in general it will be like half an hour tour of the Melbourne Tram Museum. Hope you will enjoy it. I met one gentleman here and he gave me some gifts, and I'm going to explain what are they. First of all he gave me a picture card of tram in Kolkata, because he says that you're from India and that's the heritage site where you have the tram. Obviously I know trams of Kolkata very much, and so that was very historic and nostalgic and heritage connection. And then he gave me a couple of coins. So these are from historic era. If you're on tram in Melbourne, they used to give as change long time ago, probably 70-80 years ago. And he gave me another item. It's a ticket from 1960s, and it's like 14 pence the worth of that ticket, and so it is a real ticket. And these are all free gifts for whoever visit Melbourne Tram Museum, and that was a fantastic rack of gifts that I got in this morning. that gentleman told me that I can jump on any of this tram. So I'll walk around and I'll probably try to jump on all of the trams, because here we have about 20 different tram carriages from different era over 120 years, and so it will be a fantastic experience going on different trams and look at inside the trams, how they developed over the years. And so let's start from one corner. Yeah.
I was 19 and decided to work my way around Australia.
Okay.
And I went to Hobart first. So the sun beaming in. See the
700.
Yes. So
Okay.
why would you have two tram numbers for one tram?
Is that one is associated with the route and another is the carriage number?
This used to run on the Victorian Railways tram line between
okay.
St Kilda and Brighton.
Right.
When it came to the Melbourne Metropolitan Tramways Board, they kept the number to start off with, and then they built the Z1s.
Okay, yeah.
There was a number 53 in the Z1s. So
Right.
you can't have two trams with the same number. So this became 700.
Right.
And the 52 became 701.
Okay.
So that's why you've got two different numbers.
And this one is very similar with the one that the city loop that I took yesterday to complete the whole loop.
No, it's a little bit different. This had to be regauged.
35, tram 35.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's working. Yes. So that's Route 35. They've got W8s on it. 1884 was the first trams in Melbourne, which were horse trams, but that line didn't last long.
Right.
And the cable trams, which is here, started in 1885 and
Right.
went through to 1940.
Okay.
So they were for quite a fair amount of time.
We have traveled on these in San Francisco.
Yes, yes. So where would you have thought that the first senior instructor for the drivers in London came from?
From Australia?
Yes, first instructor for the London trams, which started back in 2000, came from Camberwell Depot in Melbourne.
I don't remember.
Never expected to get my English tram driver's licence. Yes, so I was there for 3 weeks. I also had to do a day on the trams in London, Manchester, Sheffield.
Okay.
The other place I've driven trams is in Stockholm in Sweden.
Wow.
I was there on holidays in '98 and they were short of a tram driver, and they asked me could I do 2 round trips on Route 7.
Right, but did you volunteer or they advertised on the
Oh
new...
no, I was just happened to be visiting the tram depot at the time and they said could you do 2 round trips.
And you didn't have any issue, like is the same technology and you didn't need any training?
Very similar to driving these trams.
Right, okay.
And they did have someone with me for half a trip to make sure I could drive.
Okay.
But Route 7 started off with being run by the Swedish Tramway Museum Society with volunteer drivers and conductors. They have now made such a success of it that a few years after my visit they bought 7 new trams and they now employ 110 drivers and conductors.
For that touristy...
Yes, and Route 7 runs a 3-minute frequency during the summer.
So how long you have driven tram in Melbourne?
I was 30 years on the job.
That was very interesting to learn some history, and I think I'll just walk through these tramways and look at these tramways. There's all these toll trams and there is a narrow street and it is fascinating. So I'll just try to get on as many tram carriages as possible and look at this beautifully preserved
that's where the driver would go, right?
tram carriages. City Circle 35. So that is actually a historic tram that still operates in Melbourne CBD, a free city loop that you can take. You must have seen my video that I recorded on board this particular city loop tram 35, and I recorded the whole route, so you should watch that video on our channel. These are X2 classes and I'll try to get in. Look at the interior. These coaches are pretty big actually compared to today's modern tram coaches. They're quite spacious and really beautifully preserved here. I think the technology has evolved, but the operating instruments and apparatus looks very similar, because I was recording on one of the modern trams and they look very similar. This is such a historic site, and obviously it has got these 20 carriages they preserve. It's expensive to keep maintaining them, and it is a fantastic place to visit. I know there are other tram museums, one in I think in Bendigo, which is also quite famous. Passengers must not talk to the driver.
I don't know. You see there's a bell and all of there.
And how long it took to bring all these carriages here? And
Oh, not that long, because when this opened, or when they started, you could still run these trams.
yeah, like this one, I think it's very similar, isn't it? The City Circle is very similar looking one. It's still operational.
That's right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so those are types of trams that they used in this one. 1040, that's the last of the W7s.
And I was looking at the carriage. I mean, inside it's such a big, very spacious, isn't it? It's no longer that. I mean, it's very cramped, crowded Melbourne trams these days.
Yes, yes.
Tell me something about the width of the lines. Did that actually varied over the years? And also, I haven't got your name. What's your name? Hugh. Okay, thanks very much for your information.
Well, most of the tramways in Australia were standard gauge.
Standard gauge. And what's so it's like a meter or like?
That's 4 foot 8.5.
Okay, 4 feet 8.5. Okay.
Yes, which is the British railway gauge.
So what will be in the meter?
I'm not sure.
Okay, right, but now it's changed. The modern trams that we are traveling at the moment?
No, it's always been that same.
Exactly
gauge,
same
yes.
size. Okay, right. So
but the reason that we've got different gauges on the railway lines
yeah.
in Australia is due to a dispute between an Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman.
Okay, that's the meter gauge, broad gauge, and narrow gauge. That
that's
sort of
right.
classifications.
So when they were starting to introduce trains into Australia in 1850, an Englishman was put in charge. So he obviously went for standard gauge, 4 foot 8.5. He asked for a pay rise and was refused, so he left. He was replaced by an Irishman, and of course Irish gauge is 5 foot 3 gauge.
Okay.
So the Irishman said, I'm not having any English gauge in my place. So it was converted to 5 foot 3, and during this time South Australia and Victoria were starting to build it, so they built it at 5 foot 3. The Irishman was replaced by a Scotsman, and the Scotsman said, I'm not having any Irish gauge on my line. So he converted back to 4 foot 8.5. So that's why New South Wales ended up with 4 foot 8.5. When Queensland started their railways, they couldn't afford either 4 foot 8.5 or 5 foot 3, so they went for 3 foot 6 gauge.
Right, and it's still the case today.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And
okay.
Tasmania started off with 5 foot 3, but realised it was too expensive, so they converted everything back to 3 foot 6.
3 foot 6. Okay.
Yes.
Right. Fascinating history.
Yes.
So I'll just say it was such a fantastic learning lesson with Hugh, and he was telling me so many interesting histories, and that was just a learning lesson that I'll never forget, and it was quite interesting. And look at this tram while we're here. It's called Special 865. It says that it was Preston Workshop. It was built by Preston Workshop in 1973. So compared to other trams, this is probably one of the modern era one, because it's like just over 50 years old. Such a historic place. Obviously, if I can read all the information about all the tram carriages, that will be fantastic, but probably that will be a little bit boring as well if you're not really interested about tram. But I'm fascinated with trams, and I'll go and jump on this one and take some photo. I also like to go other side, and that's quite interesting that you can just walk through these carriages and look at this curtain. The driver used to have curtains. The driver will pull this curtain and start driving the tram. And you shouldn't be talking to the drivers while they're driving. So I'm now other side, and I can just walk on this tram, and this is a historic tour we are having. And now from the curtain you can see that they have now a cockpit like structure. There is a door, this door and this little seat they have. This driver can sit and close, and you see I'm sitting on this driver's chair, and it's interesting and such a wonderful experience I'm having. And that tram says it's going to Melbourne Zoo, I guess. It says zoo. And so there was a dedicated tram that you can take to go to Melbourne Zoo. Melbourne Zoo is also very historic and very interesting place that you can visit in Melbourne. And look at this tram. I mean, it's just such a wonderful seats, wooden seats, and very, very nostalgic. And Melbourne trams are so crowded. I was talking about that. It's so crowded. Sometimes you can't get in. You have to wait for the next one, especially during the office hours and busy peak time. And all these massive, spacious carriages, we needed all of that today when we have such a big population. Not 100 years ago, I guess. But what can I do? I'll just go through these. And I'll just go in the front. Oh, there is a rhinoceros statue. And this tram called football. So it's a dedicated tram for football, I think. Take you to the stadium or football stadium. Pay as you enter. Okay. So there is another tramway I can go in, and look at this, such a wonderful sight. This old chair, you can see the sponge is still hanging on, but the cover is gone. It's pretty high actually, so you need to hold the rail if you want to get up and get down. And I'm coming to the front side. And look at this one. It's Hawthorn Tram Trust California combination number 8. It must have a connection with the San Francisco cable tram system. Yes, it's written here. So that's why it is very similar looking as Californian trams, the cable tramways. Wonderfully preserved and such a lovely sight. And I can try to get into the driver's chamber and look at the view. So normally the passengers will be there. There is a glass door and they sit. The driver will be sitting here, and off you go. And this is fantastic. That otherwise you will never get access to this sort of scenarios where you can try the the driving wheel on a tram, and here it is. And here this one is, they kept it very operational, so you can try this and imagine that you are driving a tram.
I have another question for you.
Okay, and almost certainly I don't have the answer probably.
What do you reckon this is for?
What do I reckon this is for? Is it, so what I reckon is that because I was reading the history, this is a California connection, so it's like a cable tramway system. So maybe some helper will be sitting there.
No? It was the driver or conductor had to step up there.
Okay.
Step there, hang on. So this is why this is here.
To hold the...
Hang on to change the destination sign.
Oh, right. Oh,
So
fantastic.
imagine health and safety allowing that to be.
Probably they thought that is the most optimized way of health and safety then. Okay. So there is no pulley inside that you can just rotate and like these days? Okay. Right. Oh, okay. So that's quite a big climb.
Yes.
It's not easy.
No.
Well, especially when you are on time and you have to change it and go driving.
You
Yeah.
can imagine doing it in pouring rain too.
In England, especially
Yes.
when
I
it's
would
raining all the
imagine
time.
When it was raining, they'd have the destination set for going that way, and this end would be for going that way, so you didn't have to get out.
But also these carriages, I mean, even on the tram 35, route 35, you have the driving capability on both direction.
Yes.
So you can just go on the other side and start driving backward or like in opposite direction.
Yes.
Was that the normal case for a very long time until they have multiple
Some
carriage?
of the cities overseas have single-ended trams, so there's quite a lot of cities with that, which means that you can only drive from one end. But there is a backup control in case of emergencies at the other end, but normally you have to get the passengers off the seat and open up something in order, but you can only drive at a short distance in
Right.
the other
Okay.
direction.
Fascinating. And then, so how they're going to change it? So they will have a board that they need to insert, or
You can possibly, if you come over here, you'll see.
yeah. Ah, okay. So they had the turning device. It was not just inside; it was outside.
Outside.
Okay, right. Oh, that's pretty interesting.
Yes.
So we are in the training room, and Hugh is going to explain some of these training aspects of these trams.
This is the Bundy clock. Now, when you signed on in the morning, say for instance your M40 run,
Okay.
you would be given a key with M40, and you would turn it, and it would
Okay.
print on a piece of paper inside the time and your run number.
Run number. Okay.
Yes,
And it's called Bundy clock.
the
Okay.
Bundy clock.
Okay.
Unfortunately, in November 1983, at about 4 minutes to 7 in the morning,
Yeah.
a driver got off to punch the Bundy and was knocked over and killed by a bread truck.
Oh.
As a result of that, the union put a ban on punching these Bundy clocks.
And you have to do that like while you were driving the tram. So basically on
So you
road.
got off,
Right. A high
walked
risk.
across the road and punched it. Now, being at a terminus, you were allowed to pass a tram at 10 kilometres per hour,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
You can't control the others. Yeah.
this
Yeah.
truck obviously was doing a little bit more than
Yeah. Oh, very unfortunate. Oh God.
So as a result of that, the day of the funeral, all the trams from Kew Depot ran in around about the 9 o'clock mark. We took 2 trams down to the church where the funeral was being done. We parked the trams outside the church, went in, did the service, then took the trams back to the depot, stood as a guard of honour as the hearse went past, and then ran the trams out again.
Right. Okay.
So there was about 3 or 3.5 hours without trams on the queue routes. 2 weeks later, the union agreed to do these Bundy clocks again, providing they were on a reservation or on a safety zone.
Right.
Now, some of the routes didn't have any on a safety zone or reservation, so therefore you didn't know what those trams were doing. Some were a little bit more like North Balwyn. There was only one Bundy clock that wasn't allowed to be punched, so it wasn't that much longer when they abandoned Bundy clocks altogether.
Right.
So there was some time in the system where they didn't know where trams were.
Okay.
So
And so this
now
is
with GPS and everything, they know exactly where the tram is.
that's true. And this is the room where you get trained. Like the
Yes.
the drivers will be trained here.
That's right.
And what's this conveyor belt? Is it like a structure of a tram?
So the wheels would go around, and you could show someone how to start a tram up.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
And I'll tell you,
So what's this handle calls?
that's for speed. So as you went, increased your speed,
Yeah.
you'd go up. So there was 7 notches in in series and 7 notches in parallel.
Right. Okay.
But if you drove in any notch besides full series or full parallel, the tram would catch on fire.
Right. Okay. No, because of the friction and
The heat.
Heat. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Very very interesting.
And when we went one-person operation, we had a ticket machine on.
Right. Okay. Before Mikey, is it?
This is before my...
Before Mikey. Okay.
And I was given the job of testing
Right.
the machine. So I was a bad paying shift because it was only Monday to Friday, but it was interesting. And I can recall putting 5-cent pieces in, and I got to $1.95, and the timing went in and all the 5 cents came back down here. So I then had to put them in a little bit faster.
Right. Okay. So that's basically like air traffic controllers, small pieces they put on the board just to keep a track dynamically where which tram is where. Okay. Right.
That's right.
So tram location board. Okay. That's very interesting. Yeah. Look at this view. This is another carriage from the City Circle, the 35, Route 35, and it's made by Siemens. And look at the St. Kilda. We have been to St. Kilda. You must have seen the video. And this is one of the old tram that used to go from Swanson Street, St. Kilda Domain up to Turak Road. What a wonderful sight this is. And look at the bottom of the tram. It's so well painted. Turak and Queensberry Street. Look at these footsteps. Fantastic, isn't it? And look at the top of the carriage. It's all made with wood. Handcrafted. I'm sure these are all handcrafted, made with delicate artistry, and this was once a public transport. Wow, what a wonderful sight. This tram says Moonee Pond. It's going to Moonee Pond. What is this called? Domain Road. It goes to Domain Road. As you have seen this very ornamented, colorful tram, this has got a history. It was painted like this by 5 Pakistani artists in 2006 during Melbourne Commonwealth game. They painted this particular tram as that was like a decoration in Karachi. The way the trams used to get painted in Karachi, and they made this historic tram looks like a tram in Karachi, and that's why it's so colorful. It's a different painting from any other style of painting that are normally we used to in Melbourne, and that's a fantastic looking decoration. I should go inside and see what's inside. Look at the decoration. 5 artists decorated this tram as if this is a tram of Karachi, and this is model 2006, so this was done during the Commonwealth game in Melbourne in 2006. So I'm going to get inside and look at the decoration. Now I know how the trams are decorated in Pakistan. And this was a festival during the Commonwealth Games, Melbourne Commonwealth Games in 2006. Yeah, I'm sure it took a long time and it took a lot of effort to paint in such a delicate, intricate manner, and it is still preserved today after so many years, which is a wonderful initiative here in Melbourne Tram Museum. What a wonderful experience I had, and especially with Hugh. I mean, he was giving me such a wonderful time, vast amount of knowledge he was sharing, and that made the whole video so authentic, because I had no clue about all these histories. I read about it on the website, but from the website you only get very specific important aspects, but this personal level of experience and the history and personal touch you will never get until you meet someone local who has gone through 30 years of extraordinary career of driving tram and associated with Melbourne trams and across the world. So that was a huge learning curve for me, and that made the whole video such a wonderful experience. And we are coming to the other end of the tramways where we started, and I was fascinated with this particular tram because you see this is again, it has got half where you can sit inside like normal tram carriage, and you can sit here and look at these chairs. I mean, like a glossy shiny chairs made with wood and beautifully decorated one, and then in the middle and then other side we have another carriage covered, so if it is raining you won't get wet. In the middle it's probably like a more of a touristy thing, and you have the both combination, so you can sit here as well, and you can put your legs outside the tram, or you can actually like hold this rail and hang outside. Here it is such a wonderful experience because all these trams are all together over almost 150 years preserved in one location, and you get to see all of that in one place and experience and see it, and fantastic experience. If you're visiting Melbourne, you are traveling on tram because that's the most convenient and easy and probably the cheapest as well way of traveling across the city. So this morning I started from this location. Remember this particular carriage, very open and looks like San Francisco cable tram, and I'm ending it here again, and such a wonderful experience. And there are a lot of children's, you can actually get to pull the cable inside the carriage so that you can make the sound to stop the tram, and all the children are getting crazy. They're just pulling as many times as possible, and that is probably the fantastic music that I can add, because there is no other music that I need to add to this video. It is such a wonderful place, fantastic initiative. And if you're in Melbourne, as I mentioned, please visit this site. You'll get an opportunity to get to live through the history, the extraordinary history of public transport in Melbourne. Thanks very much for watching our travel videos. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Tram Museum in Melbourne. Goodbye until the next video.